Hi, I'm Matt Newhall recording from the Borg Cube. Thank you for watching the Technocrat Live. We do not have a live show tonight. I'm participating in a car show and admiring their shiny bits. Please enjoy this selection of clips and cartoons from previous shows. It's all available at thetechnocratlive.com. See you next week.
What is a technocrat? We live in and are subject to a growing technocracy. Love it or hate it, the geeks make the rules. They program your smartphone and write your music. They design our vehicles and create your movies. They guide your thoughts on social media and build the weapons that fight our wars. They value your assets and control most elections. It's their world, and everyone else is just living in it. Geeks are today's VIPs. Join me and my guests as we explore the powerful, zany, and sometimes secretive lives of the technocrats. Embrace the technocracy, and it will devour you last.
Do you have any advice for people who are starting consulting? What would be like a 3-item list that you give to people?
So item number 1 is go to expertsexchange.com and look at my article on how much you should charge, or something to the effect of.
Your number 1 is a long list of other number 1s.
Well, no, it is actually
You're such a geek, man. You can't. No huge function. I'm looking for 1, 2, 3.
It's
too complicated to put in 1, 2, 3. Huh?
How much you should charge as an IT consultant.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
And
so think about how much you're going to charge, right?
It basically breaks down to consider how much you're going to work, how much you'd like to make, what your expenses are.
Cost analysis. Yeah.
Yeah. And
learn how to do a cost analysis. So it's not even this. It's not even how much to charge. It's learn cost analysis.
I wrote this thing, I think it was in 2009, and I don't know what the stats are on it now, but for a very long time it was the number 2 article on the site.
I can't spell.
Right, yeah. And it basically breaks down, and the short of it is, given what I consider to be reasonable numbers, and I think most people would too.
Okay.
In 2009 it came out to about $120 an hour.
Okay. But it's probably changed. Inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to mention, it depends on what you're doing.
You don't have the same numbers. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. But right, it's going to also be different depending on where you're working.
Your level of expertise.
Your level of expertise, your experience.
Yeah.
What kind of network you have. If you have a whole company of other consultants behind you, so you can, your responsiveness.
So.
Which you kind of do.
A few years back, I was doing a little bit of work for another consultant who really wanted to hire me. It's like, I really want to stay independent.
Right.
And he had like 3 or 4 other technicians working for him, and he's like, look, join me, we'll make you a good deal, and because what I'm going to do, if I'm competing against you, I'm going to point out to the client that, hey, I've got multiple technicians who can help you out. Versus me, who, he's just the one guy.
Hey.
If he's got an emergency, he can't help you out.
Okay.
And my argument against that is, you know what, I'm the one guy, but I've also networked with about 20 other consultants, and if there's a problem and I can't make it to a client and it's a big deal, I'll call one of them up. They'll make it.
Okay.
Coverage is not an issue. I was in Iceland over the summer, and one of my clients had a problem. I called up another one of the consultants who I know worked nearby. Hey, can you go take care of him?
So maybe that's number 2, is build up a network of pinch hitters. So number 2 is network of pinch hitters.
You have to socialize with people, with other consultants. Look, if you're in the middle of nowhere in Iowa or Montana or some other place that there's no one around for 200 miles besides the 12 people in your little town, if you got 2 guys doing consulting work, it might be a little difficult to network with them because, one guy could easily steal your business and you don't have any business anymore. But in New York, at least, talk to people. There's so much business around. look, if you're a real scumbag, then you're going to steal somebody's client. Otherwise, you're just going to work with them. You're going to call them up when you're on vacation. They're going to call you up when they're on vacation. It's just network.
Okay. So we got two so far. So one is learn cost analysis. Two is network pinch hitters. Network other consultants. Other consultants. So what's number 3?
Oh.
What's the one thing that people would not see coming?
Well, one thing I tell people to do is and what I do for myself, everything you do for a client, bill it.
Bill everything.
Everything.
Awesome. Bill everything. Nice.
However, that does not mean that you charge them for everything.
I find this confusing. Explain.
So, if you're at a client and you're doing something and maybe you want to be nice, you want to do a nice little comp the client, so to speak, then offer a discount. Pick a day where you're there for an hour and just say, I was there for that hour. Did this work? Line right below that. Discount. 1 hour's worth of work.
Okay. That's great. So you're offering them a sale.
And you're showing them that you're not necessarily charging them for everything.
Right.
Attorneys are known to bill you for everything. Call them up and for 3 minutes and you get a bill. Well,
I always ask. I would say, what exactly am I being? How I got to say something in 1 minute, and then if you want, you can start charging me.
And for the most part, that's the one thing I don't really bill for is phone calls.
Right.
If it's a quick phone call.
Yes.
If I hop on something remotely.
So in the salary world, 5 to 10 minutes. If it's more than 10 minutes, I'm consulting.
Well,
I'm consulting, or it's part of the job. It's overtime.
Yeah, and if I don't like charging my regular clients for phone calls if it's just hey, we're trying to do this, and I walk them through something on the phone.
Right.
Especially if maybe I'm sitting at home and at that particular hour not really doing anything.
Right.
Then, okay, I'm not even going to list that. Or if I do list that, I list it and then I discount it to 0. Because it just makes people, in my opinion at least, it make me feel better when I look at a bill and I see, okay, well, I have these items, but you know what? It was zeroed out and that was zeroed out. So, okay, it's nice to see that 0. The other thing, I kind of use that as leverage in a sense. It's rare that I've ever had to enforce it, but what I mean by leverage is look, you're going to pay me on time.
Right.
Because if you don't pay me on time, that discount is void.
Right. You were doing them a favor, and you're going to stop doing them favors.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll do you a favor, you do me a favor. Pay me on time.
That alliance is 2 ways. Yeah, I got it. All right, so this is great. So I don't know if you meant to do this when you came on here, but we now have a 3-step list. Is there another one I'm missing? Do we need a 4th step?
Well, there's sort of a business model. And these days, the break-fix model.
Yeah. No. Service model, you see a monthly charge? Okay.
And there are various ways of doing that. I know one.
So 4 is set up a service model.
One of the consultants I know will actually do kind of a hybrid where they charge a minimum monthly fee and then bill by the hour. So that's a consideration.
I mean, this is a big. So people may not realize, people don't think about the fact that I know you, so I know this, that you were. At one point, you were just another salaried worker, just like the rest of the bulk of IT. Not some are consultants, but a lot are salaried. So, and you made the jump into consulting, and you just figured it out. And I mean, I think that's really impressive. I don't know if someone else, but sometimes people want to make that jump. So,
one of the points on the service model, and one of the arguments for it's considered to being a managed service provider.
Right.
And there's a bunch of different ones kind of related to that now, but. One of the ideas is you're paying a flat fee every month, and generally speaking, it's an all-you-can-eat kind of thing. Now, you may have certain asterisks, if you will, like I'm not going to replace every computer in your office 1 month and have it be covered by this all-you-can-eat fee.
Right.
But if you want to replace one a month over the course of 12 months, okay, maybe that'll include.
So there's an expected window
Yeah.
of serviceability. Not I'm going to do everything for everything in the month, but maybe 10% of your infrastructure is serviceable in a month, or
Is replaceable in a month,
or 8% or something.
But
like
you
that.
know, look, if you get infected by something and it was missed by our antivirus,
But how about blame? Is that part of the model too? I mean, do you ever blame yourself? You know, if you blow it, will you like if you?
Well, that's
Obviously, you don't blow it because you're making this face like, blow it. I did not understand this mistake you were speaking of.
That's sort of the MSP
I mean, I believe
model.
it. You're pretty with it. So
That's sort of the MSP model, because if you think about motivations when it comes to being a consultant,
Right.
if you're on the break fix model,
right,
then if you do your job well,
nothing ever breaks.
nothing ever breaks.
You're
when are you making
punished
money?
for doing a good job.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same
Not-
thing with system administrators and system engineers. Their job is to replace themselves, and programmers even sometimes.
But not even just that. But if you're less scrupulous, and like every consultant I know these days has some form of remote access tool for their clients, because they need to be able to take care of a problem whenever and wherever.
Your glass fell over.
Kind of.
Yeah. No,
No, look, it's been a slow month.
by the way,
let me
if-
remote into that machine.
If I ever caught someone doing that on either in my business as a consultant, you know, either working with me or working for my client, or I would totally fire their ass.
Absolutely.
But you know, lying, that's the problem, because you have to trust the people you work with.
Yep.
You got to trust your team, or you're just screwed.
But so if you're on the break fix model, then at the very least, there is an arguable incentive to cause harm or prolong the work.
Right. Oh, I've never seen that.
Whereas if you're on the managed service providers model,
God, you'd think it was like 1970s Chicago's unions out there sometimes in some of the places I've worked. You know, just like people dragging their feet and like, I don't want to do. And it makes it, and it's bad. It's you have to want to be motivated, because people just like, they drag you down, and you're like, all right, well, you know, I'm just going to take this slow because everyone else is, and I can't do anything without this, you know, this thing from guy A and this thing from woman B and this guy thing from guy C. So I'm just going to take my time too, and it's infectious. You know, that's what DevOps is really about, and now SRE.
well,
Getting away from that.
If you're on the managed service model, then you're incentivized to make the system as stable and reliable as possible.
Right.
Because let's say you bill a client $1,000 a month to keep their systems running. If you can keep their systems running by spending 2 hours a month, you've made $500 an hour. But if you screw up and it takes you 40 hours, you've made $25 an hour.
You've gotten the Mickey Mouse salary you deserved.
Not
for
to
that big
mention
screw up.
that the client has been unable to work for 40 hours,
Right.
presumably.
Well, the thing that's tough about that is then you have to learn how to say no to your client.
Yeah.
You have to get to the point where you can go,
and
yeah, you want me to do that, but that's crazy, and I'm not going to do that.
The managed service model is something that you really need to look at, and there's several books on, but there's so many ways that you can do it, and you do have to be a little careful. And there's potential for client abuse. You know, I pay you a flat fee. I want you to be here to show me why Word isn't printing properly. You know, you put in certain restrictions.
Is
certain
4 going to be enough, or
limitations.
do I need a bigger board? Is this enough to get someone started?
I think those are the big things to be aware of.
So this is the list. Number 1, learn cost analysis, or how much to charge. Number 2, network pinch hitters or other consultants. Number 3, bill everything. And number 4, set up a service model or a managed service model.
Yeah, you cannot be a god of the topic. You know, if you think about how you pay.
Go on.
If you think about how you pay an attorney.
Right.
You know, you need an attorney to defend you in court or to sue somebody, whatever the case is.
Right.
They do not guarantee a win. And
Well, there is a system where they do everything that's possible, which is retainer.
yeah,
But it ain't cheap, and maybe you don't want that.
but you know, they don't guarantee you wins.
Right.
No matter what.
Right. True.
And what you're basically paying the attorney for is their knowledge and knowing where to look.
Yes. At least knowing the knowns and knowing the known unknowns. Yeah.
In essence.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, knowing where to look. And that's one of the things I was complimenting you earlier on that you're really good at. And I try to be good at that too. Even if I don't know what something is, I try to have a network of people, some of which you're meeting now, that I can call on and say, help me, I don't know what to do.
I'm probably butchering the example, but I think another one of the consultants I know tells a story about going into a place. I don't think this has actually happened. I think it's more of an anecdote, but going into a place that they've said, hey, there's a problem with my server.
Right.
Walks in, looks at the server, pushes a button, and now everything works, and he leaves. Sends him a bill for $200. And the client calls up, you were here for 30 seconds. Give me a bill for $200? Well, I knew what button to push.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, if it were that easy.
I have a perfect anecdote about that. So like I mentioned before, there's a cartoon up now for the channel. So this is actually kind of a cool story. It's an open source program called OpenTunes, and it just open sourced in 2016. So I had to teach myself this app, and it took me a week to make a 45-second cartoon. But the next cartoon will be 2 days. Those first 3 days of work, we're just learning it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, $200 is cheap compared to that. I get paid a lot an hour, So if I were doing this as a job for someone, it would have cost so much, So yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a great story. Thanks a lot for telling. And I think this list will help a lot of people.
Let's go back to that list and add a number 5.
Okay. Oh, a number 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
This, I think, is actually kind of important.
All right. See, now I need a board. Give me your board.
When I
Is it the zeroth rule? Should it be number 0? No, go ahead.
Maybe.
All right.
When I first started consulting, I had the perspective that people are hiring me to know the answer and fix the problem.
Right.
And going back to the attorney route, no, you don't. You can't. Maybe you know where to look. If Windows is crashing,
Right.
you can look at why it's crashing. Maybe you can figure out why it's crashing, but maybe you can't.
So it's
And how
more
much
about
time-
solving the problem than knowing the answer.
It's about getting the customer working again.
Solve the problem.
It was, I could spend 8, 10, 12, 16 hours going over a particular issue trying to figure out why is this happening. But you can't bill the client for that. So at some point, and I'll tell you, when you're doing consulting work, it's got to be earlier than later. At some point, you have to look at that and say, look, is it reasonable for me to believe that I'm going to be able to fix this problem in the case of Windows, say, hour to 2 hours? Or, depending where the problem is, would it make more sense for me to just wipe the machine and reload it? I'm kidding. I didn't really snap it. Maybe that's empty.
Number 6, don't sniff markers. Sorry. That's a stick.
You need to be able to tell the client, look, I can keep working on this, but I don't know that I'm going to solve this quickly.
Right.
And I have to bill you for it.
Right. Is this a fair assessment of this? Solve the problem over knowing the answer. Yeah, solving the problem is a priority.
Yeah.
All right, so that's number 5.
So Suffolk County has a 5 cents fee per bag, and Nassau County doesn't. So what do tons of people in Suffolk County do?
Bag smugglers?
No, they go shopping in Nassau County.
Right.
So that's affect.
Yeah.
So that's affecting the economies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it even affects tourism. I was in Colorado, and I was at a Home Depot, and you had to pay for bags.
Right.
Yeah, and I just bought less stuff. I mean, the first time they got me, right? I didn't know. But actually, I was constantly fixing, and we had this trailer, and you had to fix it sometimes. Stuff, a lot of the stuff I built myself. So this was the maiden voyage. A lot of things were being tested. I fixed them; they're fine now. But I had to buy some things, and I'm like, I went there twice, and the second time I'm like, that can wait, because it just annoyed me that I had to pay a bag tax,
right.
Or carry out my stuff like I'm like it's like a cartoon.
But it's quite interesting. It's like when you're in Europe. I've been to Europe many times. Is everyone brings their bag shopping?
Right.
And I said,
which is probably not a problem at Home Depot, but it's really annoying in a supermarket where you have spoiled meat in the bottom of your bag and it smells. And
well, talking about meat is if people are using their bags, you have to be careful. You should only have meat bags because you shouldn't have you bring home that meat, the chuck, ground chuck. And then use that bag next week for your vegetables.
Right. Yeah. Totally. That's what I mean. Yeah. It's gross. Yeah. Do you do kosher or you don't?
I do kosher. I don't. No shellfish.
Right.
Stuff like that.
I wonder how that works for cities that have done bag laws that also have large Jewish populations. If they have to make exception. I wonder if you get a religious exception to the bag tax.
That'd be cool.
I think I just started a revolution.
There you go.
Kosher exceptions to the bag tax.
Talking about revolution, I do predict that in my lifetime, I think America is in a post-constitutional.
Yeah.
Definitely post-constitutional right now.
I hope to God not. That would be terrible.
No, we are in a post-constitutional environment right now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're at least still pretending.
It's pretending, but there will be a time where I do predict that there'll be like America 3.0 or 4.0. Well, I think it's going to be more 3.0 because
I see what you're saying. I see the same trend you're seeing, but I see a different result.
But America 3.0, we will be regionalized. There'll be regions where I think there'll be America where it's more socialism. And those states that want to be that way
wouldn't be so bad.
We'll choose that, which I think would be fine. It would be great because
you're envisioning going back more towards state rights.
Oh, big time. Because I think
I think that would be. I hope that goes that direction too.
Because I think a whole states to be a conglomerate. Say the Northeast will become more socialistic, and we'll be more open about it. We're not open about it, and we are extremely socialist. We're the land of no, and I think more certain other parts of the country will be more rights, individual rights centric.
Right.
We believe in property rights and individual rights. In fact, talking about rights, I call myself a progressive. And I'll explain this. This might sound really weird. I might consider I'm a progressive.
No, it's fine. I can 1,000 voices cried out.
No, because think about it. I think I don't disagree with you. Today's liberal isn't a liberal,
right?
Because I think they're regressives, and I am progressive because I believe in free speech.
Now you're just shit talking.
No, I believe in free speech. I believe in the right to own property. The right to be self-determination and the right to express free ideas, and I will protect that right. And those are liberal ideas. Those are progressive ideas.
Yeah.
The quote unquote liberals.
Yeah, if you dial the clock back to the '80s, I'm a liberal.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm by those standards, I'm right up the middle.
But the quote unquote liberal today is a regressive. They don't believe in property rights. I think they believe in censorship. They don't believe in self-determination.
Right.
They believe in confiscation of wealth. How much federal government?
I think all those things are okay under limited circumstances. You could bring up cases where they work. The problem is
But tell me, when is enough? When is there enough?
Yeah, well, everything's a slippery slope. That's the problem.
There is never enough. They always want more. Want more.
Inherently, so this is the thing. Democracy, in a democracy, whether it's a republic or a democracy, the participants in the democracy have to be informed. They have to be. It's not enough to be trying. You actually have to be right.
You have to, but you have to be
about what works and what doesn't.
Right. But today's
You have to be pragmatic.
pragmatic. You have to.
Yeah.
I don't care. I just want things to work.
Right. Yeah. That's true. I agree with you.
But so I do say is there would be America because the UCC laws and interstate commerce and stuff. There will always be America, but I think there'd be maybe 4 or 5 regional. Would be more like the Soviet Union, ex-Soviet Union.
So the question of commerce going over borders is always comes down to this, and it just drives me. This is like one of, if I had a top 5 things that the journalists failed at in expressing a political standoff, it would be in dealing with commerce over borders. There is a world of difference between free trade and fair trade.
Right.
I am very much against free trade. I like fair trade, and what I mean by that is when you have people on two sides of a border, and one of them has no rights, and one of them has lots of rights. Guess where everything's going to get made? The place where the people are literally slaves.
Right, and so it's like
you have to take what rights the people on the other side of a trade pact have as part of the trade pact.
So I remember when China became.
I didn't say China. Yeah, you're right, China.
So I remember when China became.
Sorry, China. It's not great.
Became part of the World World Trade, WTO, and I knew there was a disaster. I knew that would gut the Midwest. How could you not know that? And I knew corporations would be just destroying factories and moving things over in wholesale. And granted, I believe in money. I do want to own the Gulf Stream. I do want to have nice things, and
everyone wants to have nice things.
And nice, but it's like
well, hopefully we'll get into a situation soon where nice things are way cheaper.
But it's how. But what is it? Is it
I have
really,
a right to a Gulf Stream.
I do too. But it's like how much is enough do you have to make? Do you have to really gut those factories? Do you really have to make $100 trillion or $100 gazillion? Maybe you could just make $100 billion. Is that maybe enough, or maybe $100 million is enough instead of making?
Well, clearly part of what's happening there is that the gap between the lowest and the highest paid employee is just growing and growing and growing.
Right.
Especially, and often those stats don't even include the golden parachutes and the backup plans.
No.
Now I understand managers take more risk and they should get paid more, but how many more orders of magnitude more do they need to get paid than the lowest paid employee?
I agree.
So I think that is someplace where I am very much on the left, and I think
and I believe
income equity is a big deal, and it was much closer. The further every decade you go back, it gets closer.
And it's disgusting and it's unacceptable. And I think when we have America 3.0, there will be some blowback.
So here's the problem with the going to America smooth. So there's a path forward to a smooth transition to America 3.0, which is the states keep taking more liberties or using the liberties they've always had, and nobody fights them.
But states have given up all their liberty. They've given up, not all, they've given up so much of their liberty to the federal government.
Well, they could just take it back, and the problem is...
But the problem is that the federal government won't let them take it back. But when you get a collection of
they have. It's already happened with marijuana. I mean, marijuana is still a Schedule I drug, federally speking.
Yes,
you can't get a federal job anymore, but there's 40-something states that'll welcome you.
But okay, so let's touch the third rail.
Okay.
So the third rail, let's touch the border. That's a third rail.
Yeah. Okay. That's just another border, just like China, and
No, but
fair trade versus free trade.
But let's talk about So Arizona tried to just enforce border laws and use the same laws that the federal government had on the books, and the federal government took Arizona to the shed.
Right.
For the banking.
Right. So they that's going to happen sometimes.
Right.
Sometimes when states try to assert themselves.
But there was certain.
The key is popular support, and one of the reasons the marijuana laws have worked in all the states is because there's popular support of them. Right. Because it's just the generations that thought that marijuana was this ridiculous, widowmaker, have just died off. And the people who are left are the people who realize, okay, this is either neutral or good. and neutral's good enough. I don't need to interfere if it's neutral. And eventually, you know, so really that's kind of a PR war.
So,
if people see the open borders as good, then they're going to think they continue the way they are. If open borders is bad, then you're going to start seeing.
Every country that has open borders.
When you have a whole state that's against it, you know, the country's split 50-50 on this roughly.
But let's talk about, so when you lose your borders, language, and culture, you lose your country. And when you start losing, the first thing is losing your borders.
Right. Well, so here's the problem. So the reason that's happening, and the reason that thing is happening,
is because I think it's the one world order.
Yeah. Oh, I think so. I think that well, all right.
So
I don't know.
The left. So the regressors.
I don't know. That is a distinct possibility. I don't really know that.
Okay, so let's not even talk out that. So let's just take the out of the equation. The regressives, I like to say, because I'm a progressive, because I believe in liberty, property,
right,
and things like that. Is they believe in open borders.
So you're not a congresswoman. Right. Sorry. You're not a congresswoman, right? You know, Congress is the opposite of progress.
I like that.
Yeah.
So
continue.
Oh my God. So what was I?
I interrupted you.
Yes.
I interrupted you with my poorly placed hand. Yeah. Look. I'm not saying we can't talk about that. It's just I don't think there's an answer right now.
No,
I agree with you about the importance of borders.
But they have the regressives believe in open borders, and that will destroy.
So the problem is that I think what's happened, and people don't realize they've done it. And you can make this point subtly. You don't have to go guns blazing and flag waving in Texas style. It's actually
no one's saying that.
No. But a lot of people do. I'm not saying you're doing that, but a lot of people do this on this topic. But it's actually really simple. I think a lot of people are moving away from integration, and that's the real problem. There's this idea that culture is completely untouchable, and the problem with that is it blocks up mobility. And when you don't create like cultural ghettos where people are part of a culture, and you know they're safe in that culture and they get certain rights. Rights are reassigned to cultures. That's how we're being treating culture lately. And the problem with this is, is you just don't have that upward mobility. You don't have that ability to move between markets because you're trapped within the markets available to your culture. And if we fix that, the border crisis would fix itself. Because what would happen is if someone couldn't integrate, people would look at it as from the point of view of someone coming across the border, can they integrate or not? And if they're not trying to follow the laws, if they're not trying to follow the rules, if they're just coming over because they want to, they wouldn't really be trying to integrate. So that would become the problem, their lack of enthusiasm for integration, rather than the lack.
I agree, because it's like,
I mean, no one really argues. I've had this conversation, like pieces of this conversation with people, and no one ever argues against integration because that's crazy, right? Everyone's pro integration.
Right.
But what people don't realize is the stance that they're taking is actually kind of anti-integration.
But I think what the average Joe is pissed about is the lack of integration.
Yeah, I think so. The country's pretty integrated. I was surprised when I went cross country, and it's getting. But it seems like looking at New York, I saw New York getting more integrated over the decades, and the past decade it stopped.
I actually had a customer that I had previously done a fairly large gross sort of analysis of their network. And they had a DNS vulnerability, an internal DNS vulnerability. Their DNS servers were susceptible to cache poisoning.
Right.
And, it's internal DNS is big corporation. 10,000 seats, lots of servers, things like that.
Why don't you give cache poisoning 30 seconds in case someone doesn't understand it, because it's going to be a mixed audience.
Yeah, that's fine. So how DNS works. What is DNS? The domain name system. You type in www.google.com and your computer doesn't talk English or letters. What it does is it talks numbers, IP addresses.
Right.
And so what it does is it goes out to the internet. Imagine a cloud here with lots of cats videos. And it asks, hey, I want to go to this string. What is the address, the numeric address of that? We'll say it's 1.2.3.4.
Right.
The server that goes out and does that is called a DNS server, and that network of servers is the domain name system.
Right.
And your ISP's DNS server or your DNS server that you run or your company's DNS server will get the result, and it tucks it away in a little pocket. Because you're probably not the only person who's ever going to go look for www.google.com. There's probably a lot of people who would like to go to www.google.com, and Google's servers aren't going to change very often.
Right.
So you put it in a cache.
Right.
So that the next time somebody asks, you don't have to go all the way out to the cat video land. You can just like have the result right there. It's a little sketchbook that you have. Cache poisoning is telling the DNS server a result that it didn't ask for, so it puts it in its little crib sheet without having gone out there. So instead of being
that, awesome explanation. Keep going. Keep going.
So instead of that number being 1.2.3.4,
right,
you make it 5.6.7.8. So anybody that uses that DNS server is going to get the wrong address,
right,
or the poisoned address.
You have Josh, Hamza, Evan, and Benjamin, and that was it's really fun, kind of like working with these guys.
I don't even, I mean, like, I follow copyright law pretty loosely. This is like kind of a boring subtopic.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
No, it isn't.
Everybody's got completely different copyright laws. How are you guys going to resolve that? I mean, are you going to get a lawyer or?
Fortunately, so Europe with the European Union,
right?
Which kind of leaves me and Moose over kind of out of the range, because Moose is in Africa and I'm in America.
Right.
So Chapter 13, I don't know if you guys know about that, but Chapter 13 is a law stated by the European Union where basically any copyrighted material, like even used in memes,
right,
is completely illegal.
Oh, okay.
So like people are having to do things like filter their videos and stuff because they're trying to police the internet. When you police the internet, it affects everyone.
Right.
So you got to be very careful about like working with these samples and everything.
Boo! To policing the internet. Boo!
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, like you have like Facebook where they're like doing social engineering constantly, and they're like,
right.
They're basically
like there were no tragedies before the internet.
Yeah,
wow.
They're basically
they cracked the case. Those internet censors, really smart there, guys.
They're violating your first without violating your first.
Yeah.
And it's kind of ridiculous. But regardless, going back to the music,
they're violating your right. Even if you take it outside of the law spectrum, they're violating your right to make your own decisions. And I really think it's a core human right to be able to fork, to be able to make your own decisions, have your own organization, create your own relationships with people. And if you don't have good information, you can't do that. Further, they're violating democracy, because if you don't have good information, you can't be part of a capable, successful democracy. Whether it's a republic or a pure democracy, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's anti-democracy. I don't know. Anyway,
it is.
Sorry, I hate censorship.
Yeah, but it's also very difficult a lot with YouTube algorithms too. Like I uploaded my own track. I had to do it before it was uploaded, unfortunately. But when I was uploading a sample onto social media for promotion, they said you don't own the rights to this track. I'm like, I made this track. Wow. So I had to fight it.
Right.
And so I unfortunately got that taken care of. But then I tried doing vocal covers because the band Anonymous, who I mingle with the members.
I can't believe that they did that. That they mixed up your own.
No, they do. But like when I was speaking with the band Anonymous,
I mean, they did it to me. Like, so I had just as an experiment. I knew they were going to do it. Yeah. I knew eventually. I just wanted to know when the algorithm caught up with me.
Yeah.
I played a Volbeat song on my speakers on my motorcycle and just rode down the road and recorded it and put it up. And sure enough, eventually it took about 8 months, but their algorithms got to the point where it caught it.
Or someone manually got it.
Right.
Yeah.
But they just assume that there's music, so that you must not own it. You must be a thief.
Yeah. But it's like, for example, that band Anonymous I was talking about. They I was speaking with their vocalist and like a few of their members, and we were just chatting like vocalist to vocalist about like styles and whatever. And I mentioned like I tried doing a vocal cover of your song. I uploaded it on YouTube. It got taken down for copyright infringement. And I said so I tried doing one of their new album too, where that didn't work.
Right.
So now I'm trying to figure out something I can do.
I mean, it wasn't so bad when it was a DMCA takedown notice. I mean, I don't like the DMCA, but at least there was a process, right?
Yeah.
So someone had to make the claim against you. So now you could turn around and say, make a counterclaim, and so that's not true. Here's what the origin of this is, and they go, oh, sorry, and then they have to back off. But I mean, when it's completely internal to the company, you have no recourse. it's craziness. Yeah.
That's why, like, for my personal stuff at least, I never really want to get signed. I understand the benefits of getting signed. Like, some labels will pay for your touring expenses, which I'm currently stressing about because we might be going on a Europe tour and the album's done.
Right.
Little teaser, but
Europe tour?
maybe.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
But that's like the benefit of having a label, and labels could also help promote your music to larger groups of people.
Right.
But I find that if you're better with social marketing on your own, and social engineering, the term isn't social marketing, but when you're better at doing that on your own, you own the rights to your music, you know?
Right.
You're not paying a label, and like if you know how to produce your own music too, it helps so much.
Would it be easier if you guys had like a boilerplate, like non open source, but like a generic license that you guys could use, so that you could license all your music underneath it, and then everybody could use the same license, like something that had been tested in every country, so that way you didn't have to have a lawyer write you guys a specific contract to protect you.
If you're trying to protect your music, there's things you can do. Like you can do a registered letter to yourself, or you can like send an email with timestamps with like files.
Right.
Or you could do things like
if you're in a country that actually honors copyright law.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does, not just says it like China or something.
Yeah. But that's like kind of where it gets iffy. So that's where I get really nervous is about copyright stuff. So anything that I use, I make sure I have the rights to.
Right.
Like, I need to be 100% sure of that, so this way they can't come around and try to claim like that they own my music.
Yeah. I've been I've been putting title cards on the front of the show, and it's actually the biggest pain about the show.
Yeah.
Because I have to be so careful that everything on the title card is either use it, no attribution, or I made it. So I've been actually buying props and taking pictures of them and putting them on the title card so that no one can come and make a copyright claim against the image and then take the whole video down, you know?
Well, I don't know if you noticed what I do for Jump Cut is for the Jump Cut, when we do our thumbnails, we can't do fair use anymore. That's not really a valid argument.
Right.
So we can't upload like thumbnails of the movies that we're seeing. So we have to make our own.
They're just not legally honoring it.
I make B-list movie posters of all the movies we're reviewing for our thumbnails.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
That's kind of how I get around it. And like for any After Effects
it's
stuff,
like you have to be an artist. So this is something that's happening to all creative types. It's like you have to become a master of every art form in order just to promote the one that you're interested in promoting.
Yeah.
It's really crazy, you know, and it's very, you know, like theoretically copyright law should be encouraging people to do work. And if you have to become an expert in things that you don't, I mean, like, you know, I don't regret doing my stick figure cartoon. I liked it. It was fun.
Yeah,
but
like I said, it was in a project.
I am no artist. I mean, I tried to do that. Do a drawing, like a simple drawing for Lilug Live, and it was embarrassingly bad because the way that the stick figure cartoon looks good is I just did it over and over and over, like you were saying before with the vocals. I just
keep doing it.
I just did it until I got it right, and then I just had to get it right once, and that was it. But forget about doing live drawings. You know, it's not nearly as good.
I'm terrible at drawing.
But why do I have to do this? It really would be good if there was a way that artists of different disciplines could interface. I have some ideas. We've chatted about it before. I'm not ready to go public with it yet, but I have some ideas.
There's some sites you can use where they have completely royalty-free stuff you can use, and you can alter it to your need.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that. So actually, that brings up something I wanted to bring up with you. I mean, like, you know, sometimes does it really help the artists when you have royalty-free stuff?
He said copyright laws are getting stupider every year.
They really are. They're not helping. And it's not I'm not against copyright. I think copyright is valuable.
Yeah.
And you know, I think even in the case of like Linux, where you have something where it's structural, where it's you know, you have pieces that people who don't normally interface using pieces that don't normally interface, and they need to make them work together. That's when open source is really needed.
Yeah.
And everything doesn't need to be open source. But on the other hand, it's like, you know, the only good thing in copyright lately is open source, unless you happen to be a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the issues come in, and that's where like I mentioned like Spotify and stuff like that, how they're like major technocrats.
They're tilting the field, you know.
Yeah, and like they're basically I feel like a change is coming soon.
Yes.
I was working on trying to spark that change, but people are finally realizing, hey, we're not making money off of this.
Right.
And like the way I view music, which is why I'm fine being solo, is I never view music as an income. I view music as a way to just make art, you know? when you view it as a business, that's when you stop getting like really creative with it, and that's when you stop having fun with it.
Right.
So like the way
Well, you have to view it as a business. You have to be serious sometimes.
no, like it's like your
But
brand.
you can't have to be serious so often that it interferes with your creative streak.
No, you view your brand as
What I do is I merge the meditation into the programming.
Right.
Okay, so that if you follow any of the new stuff they're doing on what's called flow state, like all these extreme athletes go into stuff, and they reach these points where they're existing at a primal level to make decisions.
I'm a nerd. I'm not very cool. What the heck is flow state? What are you talking about?
Okay, so if we look at brain function,
Right.
what do we got? Let's use the blue. If we look at brain function, okay, you have from 0 to about 4.5 cycles per second in your brain is delta. Okay, from 4.5 to 7 is what's called theta.
Right. This I've heard before.
Okay,
Yes.
from 7 to 14 is called alpha, and then from 14 to 21 is beta. And then there's an interesting
So it's beta, alpha, theta, and what was this?
delta.
Delta. Got it.
Delta is deep sleep, 0 to 4.5 cycles. Theta is about 4.5 to 7, which is where you get painless dentistry, anesthesia, all that kind of stuff. Alpha is where you have 10 cycles per second. In the middle of alpha is where you have your dreaming state. Okay, you deep dreaming, REM sleep, that kind of stuff where your eyes are moving. And a beta is your awake state. So if you're focusing, like if I focus on you right now, your brain automatically goes into beta because that's a focusing.
You're not hypnotizing me, are you?
No.
Aren't we all?
Now, there's another state, which is called gamma, which is up around the 50 cycles per second.
And
Okay.
is that cocaine?
No.
Okay.
It's an interesting state because it's not, depending on how you look at it, it's not necessarily considered normal brain function.
Okay.
Okay, so this is like if you have an epileptic seizure, you're functioning in the gamma level. That's what happens when you're flashing. Now, interesting, when you go into flow state, you're in this primal level where you're accessing information from somewhere.
Right.
Okay, and you're able to make decisions based upon this information coming in. That could be like for extreme athletes, could be life and death situations that they're making decisions upon.
Right.
Now you can induce that other ways, doing programming and doing other stuff. But what's interesting
So
is
we're not talking about golf here. We're talking about jogging up the side of a mountain.
Anyone who's in a deep level of concentration where time has become irrelevant is in a flow state.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's typically thought of to be right at the 7 to 11 between 7 and 10 cycles per second.
Between alpha and theta?
Yeah, high alpha, high theta, low alpha.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is when just as you enter in to the flow state, you get a gamma burst that they're trying to understand what that means. You get a gamma burst for like milliseconds,
Right.
and then you go back down. Now you've entered this flow state.
We've gotten a software update.
Okay, well, something's happened. Okay,
Right.
so what's interesting is, if you know how to harness this, which I've done a lot of meditation, is I do all my programming in this kind of level. So
Okay.
so I'll face an issue or I'll have a new task, and I'll focus on it, and then keep on focusing in it, and then wait till I get to a state like that, which is what I've done it for years, which I've realized is what they call a flow state, where time becomes irrelevant, and you'd sit there and you're working, and all of a sudden you see, gee, how did 2 hours of time go by?
So, okay, can I stop you there?
Sure.
And so I actually have done some programming. I have an associates in computer science, and I've done some casual to moderate programming. I'm in the 100 to 10,000 lines of code space, not the million lines. But I had definitely done that. I have sat down behind a keyboard, and when I look back up, the sun is down, and I went,
hours of time went by.
What the hell just happened?
You've entered into that state.
Yeah.
Okay, now you didn't enter it into as you're going down a mountain,
Right.
and you're about to, go on snowboarding or something. You've entered into that state because you've had intense concentration.
Right.
Now, interestingly enough, the more complex the task, the easier it is to get into that state.
Wow.
Okay, so now what can you
Assuming you're intelligent enough to do that task at that complexity.
Well, in anything.
Because not everyone is.
Complex for you.
Right.
Okay, so
Complex so it doesn't really matter what the
the net. So you don't need to be doing work at 120 IQ level.
Right.
You just need to be doing.
It's complex for you.
95% or up for you.
Right, for you.
Okay, interesting.
So now what's interesting is that if you know how to enter these states, you can accelerate your learning tremendously. So you can learn all the stuff you need to do, like for new languages or new methods of programming, much quicker.
That's really interesting.
And you can intuitively get answers to things instead of having to look up in a book, for example. Now, you still need a certain base knowledge, but if you know how to harness that, and this is what I'm in the process of developing a class to do this kind of thing,
Right.
where you're able to harness this and then accelerate your learning much faster. Like I did this all through college. When I was going through college, I used a bunch of different techniques.
So
and I would
you
take
just study for 1 hour a day and then you party the rest of the time because you
No,
got
I
through your work
studied
so
a lot.
fast.
This is back before.
You just wanted to ace everything.
This is before we did.
Nerd.
Before the kids today.
Yeah.
Before the kids today who spend an hour a day in college, including going to class.
Right,
we
right.
didn't do that.
Yeah.
But if you take a book, for example, the theory is that your subconscious mind remembers everything.
Right.
Okay. So if I have to read a book for college, for example, if I slowly go through each page and just look at it, supposedly my subconscious mind has memorized the whole book. Okay.
Right.
So now when you go to sleep, what I used to do is tell myself, I'm going to read this book at night, twice, okay? And I would have dreams of going through these books and stuff like that. And the next day when I went to study it, I would be able to go through much faster.
So
Pick up the information a lot quicker.
You know, I have all kinds of crazy ideas on the subconscious mind.
Right.
And, what you're saying, I completely understand what you're saying. I have not tried it. And I'm kind of
Doesn't
like.
take much to do it.
So the thing that bugs me about it is I've dreamt code. I got to that point in the coding process where I solved the programming problem in my
Right,
sleep.
and that's
Right.
I do all my stuff like that.
Right, and of course we solve all kinds of problems in our sleep.
Right.
But I never tried to study in my sleep. I feel like I would be at the test and just panicking because
it's not
my
the only
rational mind's not aware
it's not
of
the
what.
only studying you're doing.
Okay.
You're using this to enhance your studying. So you're looking through, you say, I'm reading the
you're
book,
studying the same
then the
stuff.
following day I'm actually going to go through and read the book.
Oh, you're studying the same stuff twice.
So yeah.
Once subconsciously, once rationally.
So now
in a week.
I'm going through the next day and I'm reading my material and I can absorb it much faster and go through it much quicker.
Right, because you've already worked the concepts
Right.
out. What is the big deal with this, with the box of donuts? I mean, the black hole picture. Why do people care?
It's a vindication of, there are two scientists that I consider personal demigods almost.
Okay.
So there are two scientists whose major predictions have never been shown to be wrong.
Right.
And here's an interesting story about one of them.
That's pretty impressive. I love predictions. That's where real science is. There's too many
Yes.
people focused on data.
So
And,
about 150 years ago, people were calculating the age of the Earth.
right.
And it was either Lord Rayleigh or Lord Kelvin, one of the two. I forget who it was.
Okay.
He modeled the Earth as a ball of molten rock and calculated how long it would take to cool down to the surface temperature that it is today.
Okay.
And he came up with some number like in the millions of years.
Right.
And he published that.
Right.
A member of the Royal Society, Charles Darwin, said, impossible. Impossible.
Impossible.
There was not enough time for evolution.
Oh, interesting.
Guess who was right?
Darwin.
Natural radioactivity had not been discovered. That's what heats the Earth.
Oh. Okay.
So when Henri Becquerel discovered natural radioactivity, and people realized a lot of stuff is radioactive, and a lot of it's in the Earth, and it's heating the Earth, that's what kept the Earth hotter than it should have been.
So the radioactivity is a missing piece of the equation.
That's right, and
that's what
Darwin was
for.
right.
Oh, Darwin was right.
Darwin was right.
Yes, nice. Darwin made some amazing predictions.
Almost none of them have been, all the major ones are correct.
And the funny, so this is exact, I just wrote an article, I have a bunch of scientific theories of my own, and I just wrote an article about the state of science,
Right.
like a couple months ago, and I used Darwin
Darwin is my golden child, so I'm really glad to hear that.
So right, so in 1905,
you know, so many people take his data and they just, you know, like they'll take a page out of his book and they'll be like, oh, see, this proves that these people are inferior, or these animals are a waste of time or a dead end, and it's like, no, you have to look at the broader theory, which is that we're all one evolutionary tree. That's the real prediction.
well, I think, and the other point is that the nature of purpose doesn't appear in evolution.
Right.
Evolution occurs because it does, not because of any purpose.
Right.
It's random.
Right.
And
yes, the Cthulhu reigns supreme.
So anyway, and so Einstein in 1905 wrote his papers, and the general relativity paper was among the last. And in it, I was just telling this story to Tom earlier today, and Logan, who works for us. So he published his papers in 1905, and then like in 1911, this guy is in the foxholes in World War I, and he's calculating cannon trajectories.
Parabolas.
Right. And so, but it's extraordinarily difficult because, you know, a simple parabola gives you errors of like a half a mile.
Right.
So,
which doesn't kill anyone.
Right.
Just makes a pretty noise, pretty light and loud noise.
Right. So he's calculating trajectories, and in the middle of doing this is the apocryphal story. He calculates he solves Einstein's field equations for the first time ever. They're very difficult to solve, and he's the first one to come up with a solution. And it's easy. You plug the solution to the equation, and you check them.
Please excuse my French. Get the fuck out of here. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
in the trenches in World War I.
Yeah,
Talking about working under pressure.
Right. Well, yeah.
And what was his name again?
His name is Schwarzschild.
Schwarzschild. Okay.
And Alfred.
Yeah.
Steve, you could look it up.
Google it. I'll Google it. It's fine.
Schwarzschild radius.
Google it, people. You all have to Google it.
Schwarzschild radius. So he calculates the first solutions to Einstein's field equations, and he discovers that there's at one certain point of gravitational attraction, there's an infinity. And Einstein looks at it and says, well, you know, there's no such thing. It can't be. Nature will find a way out of it. And 100 years later, nature didn't find a way out of it. There it is.
Carl Schwarzschild?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So,
With a K.
right, with a K. And so that radius is the radius you see in the picture.
Oh.
And since then, there have been several other solutions to Einstein's equations. But
so
also,
what exactly are people seeing with the light versus the darkness in the center, which I assume is the singularity?
So what you're looking at is essentially the brim of a hat. It's you're looking at as if you were looking at the top of a hat. So the black hole is the crown, and the brim is the
I'm
glowing
familiar
ring.
with the model where the gravity wells create dip into another
but what you're looking
a third
at,
dimension.
Right, but what you're looking at there is that well, as if you know that carnival game where you roll a penny down a funnel?
Yep.
Where you're looking at that well, what you're looking at is the pennies rolling around the outside. That's what the glowing ring is.
That's why the concentration of light on the outside.
Right, and it's slightly tilted so that the bright spot is closer to the Earth.
That's why we couldn't see it till now, because it was tilted to us.
No, it's slightly tilted. That's why one side is brighter than the other.
Oh, okay. Why couldn't we see it till now? What happened?
It's very, very far away.
It's very dim.
It's very, 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 very.
They had
very
to take a lot of pictures and make a composite, and
they took a lot of telescopes. The telescope is the size of the Earth.
Right.
They use many, many telescopes.
Right.
And they connect them all with atomic clocks.
Right.
And they synchronize the images using the clock timestamps. And the amount of data was so large from the observing sessions that they couldn't use the internet to send it to MIT, so they were actually delivered in hard drives.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, they're delivered hard
just like Amazon. No, sorry. Not picking on the cloud. Anyway.
And we have to give a shout out to the woman postdoc that wrote the routine to put the images together. I don't know her name, but Tom Canino, my CTO, told me that it was a woman postdoc. They interviewed her. But
nice.
It's a vindication. I don't think they're going to get a Nobel Prize because the colliding black holes were the proof of black holes, and those guys got the Nobel Prize.
Right. So it's not a proof, but it's another verification.
It's an observational proof.
Right.
But it's a direct.
And it was a prediction.
It's a direct observation. The colliding black holes are indirect.
Can you explain what SRE is to the audience?
SRE is.
You did a great talk on this on our user group.
Oh, thank you. SRE is site reliability engineering. It was a concept developed developed by Google. They felt that the whole DevOps and Agile development process didn't really get us to where we needed to be. It still was kind of siloed. You still had developers, you still had operations people, and you're always going to have that sort of conflict because they have different priorities. Developers are looking to develop their code and push it into production. Operations people are looking to always have the systems up and running. And the best way to do that is to have no change. So you have one group that wants to change every day, and you have another group that never wants to change.
So the goal is the goal is contrary to other goals, essentially.
Basically, yes.
It's poor goal making.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and that's what SRE really goes about. What Google found was they had a bunch of developers that actually had a lot of operational experience or operational aptitude. So they said, well,
what? Sorry, that sounds like technical.
they had developers that actually understood how the systems worked underneath. They didn't just understand the code, they understood the underneath piece. So they took those people and they said...
so they took the people out of the whole pool of employed people.
And they said,
picked them out. Okay, got it.
You guys are the bridge. You're half developer, half operations. And what they found were these people started developing systems in code to control the operation, because they didn't want to do all the mundane things. They didn't want to create users and clear disk space and monitor backups. They automated all that crap.
Right.
And they kind of they lived in a world of freedom.
Sorry, the best is when you do that and nobody knows you did it. You're just like, yeah, I'm working really hard. Yeah. This is you gave me this terrible, difficult task.
Exactly. But the best part of it is they have a philosophy of an error budget. So they know going into it that systems are going to fail. It's going to happen.
An error budget?
An error budget. Or failure budget. Right. So we're going to say your system...
I need a big failure budget.
Well, if I'm writing the code, I need a very big failure budget.
Maybe everybody does, right?
But so
how do you decide how big the failure budget should be?
Well, it's whatever percentage that you as a business come up with. So let's say you're allowed to have 20 minutes of downtime.
So you try something.
Right. Okay. So let's say your piece of the pie is allowed to have 20 minutes of downtime every month. So your developers keep pushing new changes. When they get to that 20 minutes of downtime, because they've written bad code, they can't push any more changes. That's it. They've used up their budget until next month. So there's no arguing, oh, this has to go.
I have a budget like that. My wife makes sure I use up all my words when I'm here. I'm doing great, by the way. You're totally challenging me. So keep going. The error budget, yeah.
So you get the error budget, and then they also have a concept of blameless postmortems.
Right.
So you've worked on the operations side.
It's kind of like what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
With just society as a whole needs to get more blameless.
Exactly.
Or less blamey.
Yes.
Yes.
So your system fails, you have a postmortem because you want to figure out why did it fail. Well, when I first started my career, it was the system guys would go, it was the network. The network guys would go, it was security. Security go, no, it was the systems. Somebody had to be the fall guy. In the end, it was somebody's fault. And usually the guy that wasn't at the meeting, it was his fault.
Right, of course. Nice.
So with a blameless postmortem, you say, here's what broke. Here's what we can do to prevent it from breaking again.
So what happens when someone tries to blame? Do they throw an eraser at him or something? Or
yeah, they get
hit him with a newspaper.
They get thrown off the island.
Get thrown there.
Exactly.
At least a minute or two of falling noise.
So so with the error budget taking away the political fight of do we push or not push, and the blameless postmortem, people are actually free to innovate.
You guys are doing this?
What?
You guys are doing this?
We're trying our best.
Right.
I don't know that anybody's doing it as well as
with your clients. I mean, obviously, right? You have your own meetings, and then you have your strategies for your clients as well.
Yep.
So, but you're seeing it working.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds really great to me. I mean, when you told us this in the group, I was like, this is it. This totally blows DevOps away.
It's a philosophical change, and it requires managers who are comfortable in their own skin because you're kind of giving up a little bit of your control, which is is good. I think the more you push further down the stack, the better off you are.
So here's a secret that not everyone knows, although I'm sure you do know it, which is that to serve is to lead.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. If you're really being the leader, you're solving the problems.
Yes.
It doesn't mean always necessarily getting up in the front and going, fire. You know, you don't. It isn't being Captain Kirk.
Right.
There was a great Black Mirror on that, by the way. I don't know if you watched Black Mirror, but
I've watched a few of them.
right, okay. So it's kind of like Twilight Zone, so everyone's kind of different. But yeah, you don't get to be Captain Kirk and get up there and go fire. You know,
Right.
it's like really what you're trying to do is you're trying to like you're Scotty and you're trying to glue things together.
Yes.
Yeah, or you're Uhura and you're trying to get people to talk to each other.
Right.
That's what a real leader's doing.
Yep.
The guy in the captain's chair is just there to make the final decision when there's no other way to do it.
Exactly.
Or to do all this stuff that no one else wants to do. Hopefully not too much of that, right? Right.
Yeah, we get the interns to do that.
Yeah. Hopefully you can delegate, right? If you have resources. If you're successful, you can delegate at some
Right,
point.
exactly.
Yeah. So, okay, well, that's a great explanation. So you guys are happy with the results, or is it still a work in progress?
It's a work in progress.
Is there anyone out there going, this is terrible, we can't use this anymore, it's a disaster, we shouldn't have done this?
Not that I know of. I mean, a lot of big companies.
I don't think so either.
Facebook is moving this direction. Google obviously embraced it. LinkedIn uses it. So I
So
think
Google is not always evil, huh? All right. So they're evil but smart.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
One of the things we did, ListNet used to have these happy hours, and it'd be all the ListNet members. But what happened over the years, all the ListNet members knew each other. So it was like a clique. It was like, yeah, we're all getting together. So a few years ago, Peter and I decided to change the format, and when we do a happy hour, we invite other groups to do it with us. And they may not even be tech groups.
Okay.
So we're doing one April 30th, and everyone watching is invited, and everyone not watching is invited. It's at Jewel on 110, and we're doing it with a group called Women in Tech Network,
Okay.
the Urban League of Long Island, and Minority Millennials. So the idea is bring in these other groups with our group and kind of let them cross, connect, and fertilize. And it's made some interesting things happen because of that. And that these happy hours have become big. Like, we used to do them, and if we got like 50, 60 people, we were happy. Now we get like over 200 people. And yes, part of it is because we're inviting these other groups, but the other part is our members don't necessarily know the people that are going to be there, so they're meeting new people. You know?
Right.
So.
And sometimes it might just be people there who just want to socialize.
Yeah.
They know someone.
Right.
They have a connection to the community, even though they really don't feel they're part of it.
But now these people from other groups might come to a future one, and it's just really,
I mean, I don't know if this was all part of your maniacal plan or if you just stepped in shit.
Right.
But I mean, this is kind of what I've been saying all along, is that we're a freaking technocracy. You're all part of it. You better get used to communicating with us. You don't have to be a master of all trades.
Right.
But this affects you.
Right.
We're making choices and decisions that are going to affect your life and change your life.
Right.
And please join us. Join the conversation. Be a part of it.
Well, that's it.
And that access, that inclusivity guarantees that the meritocracy isn't junk.
Right.
That it is a true meritocracy, and it isn't just an exclusive, club where we're like, we've got our own plans, and we're going to meet in secret and attack the world.
Right.
What was that quote? Any organization that meets in secret is, generally not in the public interest. So. We're not like that. We don't live in secret.
No.
And I think that's important. I mean, it's interesting in the context of women in tech, particularly.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of women have trust issues with access.
Right.
It has to be a safe space.
Right.
It can't be dark.
Right.
It can't be private.
Right.
It can't be somebody's house.
Right.
Ideally, it's a public space where people normally who aren't part of the group will meet.
Right.
So that they can just walk in the door and say, "Hey, how's it going?"
Right.
And if it gets weird, they can leave. Not because we're going to get weird.
Right.
But how the hell do they do that?
Right.
Well,
I mean, we had a Women in Tech event here, and we had about 60 women here that night, and it was the only tech event I've been to where women grossly outnumbered the men. And it was like, and I was like, and this is
fist bump.
Yeah.
Good ratio, dude.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't run it.
Too much of tech is a sausage party. I hate it.
Well, but so imagine you're a woman and you're always walking into a
That's how
room
it
full of men.
usually is.
That's how it usually is.
Yeah.
And you know, and yes, you can make arguments that, you know, well, you know, you can't just promote it for the sake of political correctness. But it's not for the sake of political correctness. There's probably some women that are very talented at tech that have been put off from tech because they had a bad first experience or they didn't feel they could relate. Less and less these days, thankfully.
Yes.
You know?
It's starting. We have regular women in our groups.
Right.
You know, it wasn't. We always have had regular women in our groups, but that's still the case.
Right.
I just like to see the ratio get a little bit better. You know, I don't know if it's because women tend to get into tech and they tend to be more business oriented, and they see open source as not business.
Right.
That's completely not true, by the way. You're welcome, and we want you there. And if you're working on anything that is even touches infrastructure, open source is your bag. But you want to do this.
I see it at open source, non-open source events. Every tech event I go to, it's mostly men.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it's,
well, so we've had experience. We had an experience. This is a long time ago. Now, this is in the '90s.
Right.
We had an experience where a woman who the guys found attractive, who was attractive, walk into a Linux meeting, and she got hounded.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, this is again one of those things where, okay, I'm going to stop that next time. But I mean, you know, basically every guy there was trying to pick her up.
Right.
You know, and I think part of it is because the ratio is so bad, it becomes a self-feeding loop. Right. Where people are just like, they're so lonely and they're sad that there aren't women in tech. Right. But you know, they don't always necessarily, you know, they spend, you know, not everyone is kind of a polymath like us, where you have social skills and you also have technical skills. You can sit down and deal with the unyielding computer for 9 hours a day or 10 hours a day. And so they get into the situation where they're desperately lonely and they see the one opportunity and they overreact. And it's scary. I mean, you know, it would scare me. So now I always make sure that everybody that comes in, I try to go at least say hi. And say, hey, welcome, here's the basic rules. We basically don't have any rules. Do what you want, socialize with who you want, be friendly, don't let anyone else give you another impression. You know, I don't know how useful that is, but hoping that the women who come stay. So I guess it worked.
Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, I guess that's all you can ask for, right?
It's all you can ask for. It's all you can try to do.
I mean, I can't get people. Well, maybe through the show. Maybe when they see this show and they see us talking about this and it's a problem. It's a meritocracy. People are rewarded because of skills. The great thing about the computer business is that you've got everybody from every walk of life. It's just about the meat inside your skull. You know, it's not about anything else. It really isn't, because we can't afford it to be about anything else. There's too much demand out there for this field.
Well, it's interesting because ListenNet for many years tried to develop a women in tech group from within our own thing, and these other groups kind of spun off on their own, and I'm kind of glad they did, and now we kind of work with them. One is called Long Island Women in Tech, the other is Women in Tech Network Long Island, and just happy to see it happening and to do stuff.
And they're doing well, the groups?
They're doing well. They're doing extremely well, and we're glad to support them, and just, you know, it's very important.
Shout out, Lilac meetings.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. You see, you know, like I'm laughing because someone could say, "Oh, that was creepy." But it's not creepy. It's not creepy. We want there to be more. My last job actually was really great. I had the best ratio. It was 50-50 in my subgroup.
Wow.
Yeah, the Unix group was 50-50. So that was the best I've ever. I don't expect to do that well again for a while. But it wasn't bad, guys.
But you know,
make it happen. It was fine.
Another reason for diversity is because sometimes people with the same background, same thing, think the same way, and it's good to have someone think differently. You know,
a team isn't just a pile of clones. It's people with different. You know, like I was saying before. I fucking hate the word synergy.
Right.
It's a terrible.
Oh,
awful,
wow. You're going to say synergy?
Synergy. It's true,
Right.
though.
Yeah.
It's true. It's rare.
I have to say mojo
instead. What?
Mojo.
Mojo?
Yeah. Not quite the same, but.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Well, mojo. But like, it's just like when you put a group of people together with different skills, it has more mojo.
Right.
Than it has
a bunch of people that are the same.
A lot more. I mean, some is definitely more than the parts if the parts are different.
Right.
You know, and and it hurts a little.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little scary.
Right.
But you're taking risks. You're going out there, you're interfacing with people who see the world differently than you.
Right.
And this is important on both sides. Also, you know, women who just I've seen. Apparently, there's some real sexual harassment problems in specifically in Maine and Chicago.
Really?
Just from a couple of people I follow on Twitter.
Huh.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with men talking down to women, particularly. This was cybersecurity, but it could be other IT fields too.
Right.
But they're definitely in those two places.
Right.
I've seen stories where people where men were just treating women like, well, go home and make me a sandwich.
Right.
Pseudo make me a sandwich. Right. You know, and fortunately, the best thing I would say, I have a lot of negative things I could say about New York, but one thing I say about New York is we got that right.
Right.
You know, there is opportunities if you're whatever.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
any sexual orientation,
Right.
any religion,
Right.
any either sex, any sex,
Any race.
Yeah. People don't care. They
Right.
really don't.
Right.
You know, it's just about having the brains to do the job.
Right.
Wow, I didn't think we were going to go there.
But it's a passive hurting.
Right.
And that's how it's justified, because
Right.
it's not active. You know, the first Hippocrates. You know, we have the Hippocratic Oath, and it's above all, do no harm.
Right.
I don't agree with that. I wrote my own oath.
Whoa! What?
Yeah. I actually,
you wrote your own oath?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And my suggestion.
Does it have a name?
No. It was
Okay.
like no, it doesn't.
Okay,
But
you should put it on the internet and put it out there.
Well,
I don't know if that's legally possible, but if it is.
Sure. I actually tell every student, I said, before you go to medical school, write your oath. What are your feelings? What are you striving to do?
I love oaths.
At the end of medical school, write your oath again. Don't look at your old one, write the new one. At the end of residency, write your oath. Don't look at the old one.
In my opinion, oaths are the only thing that separate us from psychopaths. You know, because if you have that empathy, makes that oath have meaning.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you have, which of course most people do, most people have empathy, and then when if you have your oath straight with your morals, then your ethical compass never spins wildly. You always have a pretty good footing as to where you want to go.
Which may or may not be compatible with the people around you.
Right.
So,
well, there's both, right? There's one is futurism, you know, making society better, and one is now keeping the wheels on,
right?
Making sure the engine doesn't come flying out of the hood, so that everyone's out of luck. You know, you want to keep the bus on the road, but you don't want to neglect it so long it becomes unsafe.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly what's happening. You know, a lot of things are becoming unsafe.
Okay. All right.
You know, there is, taking a step back about the do no harm, my oath is basically, the first rule is do right, and only then afterwards do no harm. There's no active doing right anymore from what I see. Everything's like do no harm, let's be very passive about everything, and everything will work its way out, but there's less and less people actually actively doing what's right. You know, I have...
Why do you think that is? Are they bad people?
Scared people?
Scared? Okay. Scared of what?
We can't, and I'm not making fun of them. You know, if someone's legitimately scared, we have to acknowledge that feeling.
I think I know what they're scared of.
But I'll give you a good hint.
Yeah.
A good example. I had a woman admitted to the hospital, late 80s, and she's a Romanian lady, and she said, someone came in, said, how are you feeling today? And
right.
she goes, I'm 80 years old. What does it matter? Who cares? I'm going to die soon anyway.
Is it bad that I feel like that at 44 sometimes?
No.
Sorry, continue.
Actually, people who don't feel like that at 44.
Just once in a while, you know. When they get up in the morning, who cares?
So they actually called a psychiatrist.
Okay.
This woman is severely depressed. She might be suicidal. And this is I'm the private attending here. She's
Right.
admitted under my name.
Right.
And someone else, because she made this comment, they called a psychiatrist. The
Right.
psychiatrist comes, and they want to admit her to a psychiatric long-term facility after she's discharged. And I told the psychiatrist, I said, listen, first I wrote my note. I said, in my note, I said that what she said here is a common expression that the elderly use in Romania. I'm from Romania.
Right.
And I said, if I had to institutionalize every patient who used that expression, half of my patients would have to go into an insane asylum.
Right.
I'm sorry, this is an expression, this is a cultural expression, this is, and we should be sensitive to this.
Don't mess with the culture jail, because bad things will happen to you. Yes.
Right, but then I wrote at the end of my note, if this patient is discharged without my official discharge, if she is discharged or moved by anyone other than myself, I consider that against medical advice. Holy crap, did the brakes screech on the whole system. They
Wow.
actually got another psychiatrist to come in, and they started, he's like, listen, this is what she said. I'm like, listen to me, please. She's alone here in this country. If she becomes institutionalized, eventually her insurance will run out, the Medicare will run out, and then they're going to take her home away from her to pay for her medical bills. That's what happens in a system. You start losing your stuff little by little. And I looked at the psychiatrist, I said, listen, I can't stand her, and she hates me. She called me an incompetent asshole just a few minutes ago, and I can't stand her, and quite frankly, I don't ever want to see her again. But what's right is right. You can't institutionalize someone and take their home away. You can't do that.
Completely off the rails, man.
So, and then of course, so it was the psychiatrist, the chief of psychiatrists, the chief of medicine, everyone got involved because this woman made a passing expression and they wanted to institutionalize her, and that would have resulted in her losing her home. And